Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the World Government Summit. I'm Nathan Stephanopoulos, your moderator, and I'm joined today by Enrique Lores, the CEO of HP. We're here to talk about, as you know in this session, AI, and here is it hypergrowth or is it hyperbole, and reimagining the impact on the economies. And I think it's safe to say, and you've heard in some of the previous sessions, that AI has gone from a buzzword just a few years ago. I'm reminded of a comment that His Excellency actually made last night at an event where only a few years ago, he's the Minister of Artificial Intelligence, he was approached and asked, why does the UAE have a Minister of Automotive Insurance? And yet we find ourselves today talking about AI in such an aggressive way in terms of the impact of how it's reshaping our industries, economies, and society at large. By 2030, the expectation is that it will add nearly $15 trillion to the global economy. And so as AI's potential is immense, we are facing challenges around ethics, workforce shifts, regulation, and access. So we're very fortunate today to be joined by Enrique Lores, whose company HP stands as a leader and at the forefront of adding an aggressive play of AI across the application layer. In fact, we just heard before from Akash of putting AI onto devices versus software, so we'll be getting into that. But I want to start and just diving in first by framing this debate, hypergrowth or hyperbole. So personally, are we on the brink of extraordinary change, or is this an overinflated moment on how we are approaching and talking about AI?
Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you for having me here. I think we are at the edge of a very, very significant transformation that is going to impact how all of us work and how all of us live. The way I think about that, having been in the business for a long time, we're in a similar situation to where we were in the early 2000 when the web was starting to grow. We were all talking about the change that was happening. The change happened. In some cases, it was different than what we were expecting. But we are convinced that the change is going to be huge and that it's going to be impacting how all of us work and how all of us live.
So I'm excited to get into specifically the work that HP is doing, particularly in the impact of economies, and talking about the growth and the innovation. And HP is focused on delivering products that provide value to workforces, particularly. What is the work that HP is doing in terms of outfitting AI-enhanced technology and devices, from computers to printers and so forth?
Yes, what we think is, in a period of change like the one we're going through, it's very important to be very focused. And we decided to focus on a specific area and with a specific technology. What we are driving from the company is to work to define the future of work. We think that with AI, we have a unique opportunity to address two of the big problems that companies like us have today. From one side, we want to continue to increase our growth. We need to continue to increase the productivity of our employees. At the same time, we care about how people feel about the work that they do. We believe that having people motivated is critical, and we think that with AI, we can do both. We can increase productivity, but at the same time, we can make people feel better about the work that they do, because they will focus on those areas where they add more value. They will be able to remove and to reduce the time they spend in more mechanical things that they really don't provide a lot of personal satisfaction. And it's a very unique point in time where we think both things are possible, and this is what we're doing.
What are some examples of what HP is doing in terms of the devices?
Yeah, I think for those of you that attended the presentation from Akash before, we are one of the companies that are working with them. We believe that AI will happen in the cloud, but also there is an opportunity to experience AI at the edge. And we are integrating AI into all of our portfolio. We are starting with PCs, and what this means is that today you can run many of the models that you were able to run before in the cloud, you can run them locally. And this means it's cheaper, it's faster, and it's more secure because you don't need to move the data around. But we are also integrating them in printers and in other devices. And for example, in printers, which you will think, a printer with AI, what does it mean? I know that many of you probably have printed many times, for example, spreadsheets. And when you print a spreadsheet, sometimes it's difficult to get what you want because you don't define exactly the frame, and then when you push print, you start getting many pages that really you didn't care about. By making the printer smarter, they will be able to know what you want to print, even if you are sending the wrong instructions. So when you send the wrong file, the printer will detect that, and they will tell you, are you sure you want to print this, or did you want to print this other thing? Of course, you will say, this is really what I wanted, and the printer automatically will change that. And this is just a very basic example of the type of functionality and improvements that we are going to see across the full portfolio.
And how do you address some of the questions or the debate of a AI-enhanced device versus cloud-based, where today we're seeing most consumers using it by going to a ChatGPT, to Claude, or to Gemini? Why is having it on your PC going to be more functional for the user than simply saying I can go and use these platforms that are in the cloud?
Yes, first of all, we think it's going to be complementary. We don't think it's going to be one model versus the other. Depending on the situation, what model will be better than others. As I said before, it's going to be about cost, it's going to be about speed, and it's going to be about security. And where we see this application starting to happen is mostly on the B2B side, on the commercial side. And you can think about many applications where you will be able to run the application locally, and you will be able to do it in a much faster way. For example, I have my earnings report to the street in a couple of weeks from now. What I'm doing now is I'm loading in my PC all the reports, all the business analysis that will be in my PC. I will be running my local AI. So that will be the only place where all this information is there, and I'm training myself using the model that I have in my PC. That's an example of a case. Another example that we have is we have seen that for our teams, presenting effectively in video conferences is very important. So we have built an application that gives you real-time feedback. So when you're presenting to your PC, the PC will be saying you should sit straighter, you shouldn't put the hand on your mouth. This type of real-time feedback you cannot get from the cloud because of the time it takes to transition information up and down. All these things can happen locally and can really have a very significant impact on all of our productivity.
So you're seeing more of the commercial layer for your offering in terms of, again, having an impact on workforces and productivity.
This is why we decided to focus in the future of work. We think that different from many innovations that we have seen in the last 20 years, this time this innovation is, because we have seen innovation starting from consumer and then going eventually to commercial customers. We think this time is different. We think the use cases where this is going to have more impact are in the commercial side. This is where this technology we think is going to start permeating in all of our lives, and then eventually there will be more consumer applications.
And as a leader of a global company, how do you think about some of the fear that exists within companies and the way people are observing is, will AI replace me in my job? The relationship between the technology and the AI and humans.
I think both things are true. I think if we think about the impact this is going to have in the workforce, many jobs that we see today are going to disappear. But there are going to be many, many jobs we cannot even think about that will be created because of these new applications, which is what we have seen as many technologies have developed and have been embraced during the last 15 and 20 years. And this is how we think about it.
And how do you message that to your own workforce internally?
Well, in our case, first of all, it's a great opportunity to drive growth and really to use this technology as much as we can. I gave the example of what I'm doing personally. We are asking every team to embrace AI. We are asking every group to think how they can increase their productivity by using AI. And yesterday, I think in the event, we were watching a video from Arvin, when last year he said, every job is going to be impacted by AI. I'm sure he will be talking about this next. We have a very, very similar view.
And in terms of how AI is then deployed responsibly, and looking at from the responsibility that you have as a leader, again, of a company like HP, how do you take into account integrating and distributing AI tools across your products?
I think making sure that we do it in a responsible way is critical. I think this technology can have a very beneficial impact, but also a very negative impact, and we need to make sure that we balance both. And what we see is that different countries in the world are getting different balances, and at the end it's really about being balanced and both driving innovation and driving growth, while at the same time thinking about how to monitor and how to control it.
Well, we're here at the World Government Summit, and let's talk a little bit about regulation. What do you think governments should be doing to help the business community in terms of regulations that could help decision-making around the deployment of AI?
I think in many cases today, and we were in Davos a few weeks ago, and this was one of the key topics, there are countries where deregulation is probably the best thing that should be done, because if not, they are going to be restraining innovation in a very significant way. And that's something that we discussed that I think is very valid.
And are you involved in working?
Of course, we participate with governments all over the world to make sure that they understand the benefit, and also we provide suggestions in terms of what we think is better to do to control it.
So, let's also look forward a little bit and how AI is a catalyst for collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. How is HP looking at that? Are you doing anything in that space?
We are actively working with many universities around the globe to help us to specially develop specific use cases for vertical industries. As we deploy AI at the edge, developing models that have been specially trained for specific applications, vertical businesses, companies, is really key, because then is when you get the maximum value from these smaller models, and working with local entities and local companies is critical to make it happen.
Any specific examples?
For example, we just came from Spain, where we have a large center of collaboration with a university there. We were in another country in the Gulf where we are building a very similar model, so we clearly see the opportunity to do that all over the world.
How do you look at the next decade? I mean, I know we're kind of talking, technology changes so rapidly nowadays. We heard from Akash saying this is a kind of once-in-a-generation transformation. But if you had to kind of look another 10, 15 years out, how are you seeing it for a company like HP and kind of across all industries and the impact economically?
Yeah, I think that having been in technology for more than 30 years, this is the period of fastest change we have ever seen. And I think it's hard to predict exactly where we will be 10 years ago. We know it's going to be very different from where we are. A lot of the work that we do today is going to be replaced by machines. Many new opportunities to really add value are going to be created. And probably one of the most important changes that we will see is how we interact with computers is going to be different. And these big transformations always are based on a change in the computer-human interface. This is one of the most fundamental changes we have seen.
And I'm curious, just from as we talk about the future and kind of the global perspectives here, is how do you think about the disparities between emerging markets and the developed markets?
I think this is an area where we need to be extremely careful. I think access to technology is going to accelerate the growth of developed countries and also develop parts of the countries where it is there. We need to make sure that we provide technology and we make sure that technology is accessible in a similar way in developing countries. Otherwise, the difference between the North and the South is going to continue to accelerate. And this is, from our company, one of the areas where we really are focused, because we need to make sure that we provide or we help to drive digital equity. And we do that both by providing access to technology, but also by providing training to young people or in every country in the world, so they don't only know how to use computers, but also they know how to use computers to change their lives, to be able to progress, to be able to study, to be able to create jobs. And we have multiple programs all over the world to really drive that, because our goal is not only to continue to grow as a company, but also to have a positive impact in the countries where we are.
And you said something as it relates to the training. How do you think about that from the deployment of your AI computers today and the idea that you get these out into your clients and workforces, but the training that's required as well?
I think making sure that the workforce and the overall population understands how to get value from AI, how to use this new technology, is a big barrier that we need to overcome. This is why internally in the company we're making sure that everybody understands it, everybody uses that, This is the advice that we give also to our clients.
How do you do that, though? Like, how does that go into practice in terms of, trying to encourage downstream people to be using it within the company?
I think in our case, in multiple ways. One is in making sure that first everybody has access to the technology. For example, something that we have decided is in HP, any new PC that is going to be used internally is going to be an AI PC, of course. Every new printer is going to be an AI printer. When we go through business reviews, and this is very operational but very effective, we make sure that every function has a plan to adopt AI to improve how they manage the business. And this applies from the legal team on how to define contracts, to the marketing team, how they generate content, to the R&D teams, how to develop software. Every group needs to have a plan to use AI, needs to start measuring what is the impact, because we know also that this is the best way also for us to learn how to train, how to teach our clients of how to use the technology and how to gain value from that. I mean, it's a big but very exciting journey that we are really in the middle of doing.
Well, I'm curious, based on that, do you see the commercial value in what HP is doing and putting AI into the devices as being the kind of trigger to make AI become more mainstream for how people use it, or will be more kind of the personal computer experience? Where do you see the rate of adoption being driven from?
It needs to be driven by the application. I think what we do in hardware, what is being done in models, are just enablers for the change that is coming. When this is really effective is when the application uses and shows the value that these new technologies are going to bring. And this is why this is an ecosystem change. It's not something that one company is going to be doing. It's not something that we need applications to change. We need the new models to be more efficient. We need the new chips that Akash was talking before. We need the portfolio of devices. All this is what is necessary to drive the change. And as you were saying before, we need a lot of education and a lot of training.
Well, I want to close with a set of final questions, really. Again, in terms of your role and vision and leadership and what's required in this moment of time. Again, you're a global leader. What advice do you have for other young leaders and leaders across any industry, frankly, in terms of integrating AI tools within their organizations, how to address the resistance and the fear that comes in, both what you're doing directly within your organization, but how you would give advice to other leaders going forward?
I think it's first to realize that this is one of the periods of biggest change that we have seen, and change is opportunity. And those that will embrace the change and will take advantage of it will succeed. Those that will not are going to fail. And it's a matter of time that those companies that will not be using AI across the board in a deep and significant way will not be competitive anymore. That's the first thing that every leader in the world needs to understand. Their businesses, their companies are going to be disrupted, and they need to use AI to continue to succeed.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to close. Thank you again, Enrique. Thank you all for having us here.
Thank you.